Welcome to Testable Faith. My name is George Raxon. I'm the Scholar Community Director here at Reasons to Believe, and I am with visiting scholar Dr. Brian Huffling. So welcome, Brian,
Thank you.
to Reasons. Now, I'm a philosopher and you're a philosopher. Why don't you tell us a little bit further about your background? You teach at Southern Evangelical Seminary?
Right, Southern Evangelical Seminary and Bible College. I teach mostly philosophy. I've taught Bible across the years and apologetics, but I'm the director of the PhD program now, so I teach most of the philosophy courses there.
Most of the philosophy courses. And you also have a military background. You're a chaplain as
Right,
well?
I'm a reserve chaplain in the Air Force.
Okay, so we both have some of a similar background in both philosophers, and I was a pastor, so
Okay.
do similar.
Yeah, I've been on church staffs before
Yeah.
as well, a few times, in various capacities.
So it's not just academic for us doing
Right,
philosophy. There's a lot of practical application.
Right.
In fact, that's what we're here to talk about today. One of the things that we deal with here at Reasons to Believe is we're interacting with a lot of scientists, people in the STEM fields, people influenced by the STEM fields, and being both philosophers, why do you think that scientists should, care about philosophy? And maybe you'll say, well, they shouldn't, and we can just end the video right here.
Yeah, they shouldn't. We're done. Okay.
we can move on. But why should they care? I mean, there's an emphasis today, and rightly so, by scientists to have science education and bolster that.
Right.
But why should scientists also care about philosophy? Do they interact? How do they interact?
Okay.
Talk about that.
It's interesting how we can get in our own silos in academia, where you're a historian or you're a scientist or whatever. I think a lot of people who think that we don't need philosophy don't know what it is, because it's not a matter of saying philosophy is better than anything else. It's a matter of just the unavoidability of it. So philosophy is simply our views of reality, our views of knowledge, what knowledge is, how we know it, our views of how we reason correctly, use logic, beauty, truth, all that. So to some extent, we can't do anything like history. We can't even do biblical interpretation without assuming or taking on an implicit or explicit philosophical view of, say, what is meaning? Where is meaning in the Bible, in the biblical text, or any text? Do I get it from the text? Do I get it from my own mind and import it onto the text? So with science, scientists are about the nature of reality and how we know about things. And so philosophy can help a scientist by saying, first of all, what is the nature of science? Where is the demarcation of science and non-science? And that's been historically the philosophy of science. So scientists can demarcate what actually they're doing by understanding their parameters and their philosophical boundaries. But in making claims about the nature of reality, how we know it, those are going to inherently be philosophical, at least have an underpinning that's philosophical.
So first of all, getting an understanding of what philosophy is.
Right.
We talk about the love of wisdom, in ancient philosophy. It's not psychology misspelled. That's what I thought at first. But getting an understanding of what philosophy is, it deals with those different aspects: metaphysics, epistemology, logic. You said,
right.
Ethics, those types of things. You mentioned the demarcation, or to put it another way, the boundaries
right.
of science and philosophy. Can you talk about those a little bit more to explain, maybe give examples of it?
Sure. There's been debates about what counts as science, what does not count as science. So some scientists have said, well, if you can falsify something, then it's scientific, or if you can repeat it, or you can do this, that, or the other, then it's scientific, and it counts as science. Then we've had scientists say, we don't need anything besides actual natural science, and that natural science can explain everything, and there is no knowledge apart from natural science. In fact, some people have tried to reduce philosophy to simply mathematics and science. That's, of course, well known as scientism, which ultimately is a philosophical position, which is why I said we really can't avoid doing philosophy. And again, it's not a matter of saying that our discipline is the best of all the other ones out there. It's just that I got into philosophy because I want to study God and philosophy of religion. But I learned that philosophy is so broad that it really is required in making even the most basic claims about reality, even biblical studies, historical studies, and philosophy of music, philosophy of art, all kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, you mentioned that scientists use mathematics, and mathematics isn't isn't inherently scientific in the sense of empirical. So you use mathematics in order to understand scientific
Right.
concepts or reality in that. And we also use philosophy, just like if we're going to communicate, we have to use language or something
Right,
like that,
right.
right? So it's inherent by it. Now, scientists use arguments, right, to support their theories, extend them, expand them. That's an integration of science and philosophy
Exactly,
too, right? Maybe
right,
talk
right.
a little bit about how those two work together there.
So the nature of arguing in the sense of a logical argument, not like children or spouses arguing
Right,
together,
not a quarrel.
is where you have a demonstration, you have premises like all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore he's mortal. That would be a demonstration. That kind of reasoning is inherently philosophical. It can certainly be informed by science, but the rules as such within logic are going to be philosophical in that they transcend every discipline. So, I tell my students, you're not always going to be, you can't be everything. You can't be a scientist, you can't be a philosopher, you can't be everything. But you can be a good thinker. And so if we can get a handle on logical thinking and critical thinking, that'll transcend and supersede all the disciplines. So if you want to read Richard Dawkins or something, you don't have to be a biologist to kind of follow what he's saying and see if what he's saying is sound or not, as long as you can kind of track the logic. And that would be a philosophical way of going about that.
Yeah. Well, Dawkins uses arguments and dismisses philosophy.
That's right.
sometimes
He
without-
does. Yeah.
While he's using philosophy.
That's
I
right.
guess.
Same thing with Hawking. On his first page of his book, The Grand Design, philosophy is dead, and then he goes on to write a whole book on philosophy of science. So this is another example of how we really can't avoid in doing philosophy.
You mentioned in that science can tell us something about God, and that's part of that demarcation line again. What do you think science can help communicate or point us to God? What can't it do?
What can and cannot do?
can and
Okay,
can't
so the more we study things, both on the cosmological scale and on the chemical, biological scale, we see more and more design. So, I'm not a scientist, but more I learn about it from what you guys are doing here at RTB, it's just more and more amazing. I mean, the more I learn about the cell and the biochemical structure of organisms, especially humans, it's just amazing. And that will tell us that whatever brought that to be what it is would have to be just an unbelievably, amazingly intelligent kind of being. And so the order we see in biology and cosmology would be something that would require the cause to be able to make that affect what it is. So it can definitely inform our overall view of what the cause and ultimately God would be. What it can't do would maybe tell us, depending on the argument. So like certain types of arguments that simply are based in a naturalistic scientific level, philosophers will say, well, a naturalistic science like biology, chemistry, can't transcend or supersede the level of nature. It can tell us certain things, but it's going to require a philosophical move to get beyond this orderly level of nature to a supernatural cause.
You're looking for there. So if you could speak to, a person could go through high school and they're on a science track, and they could easily jump into a college program where they don't officially hit upon philosophy. What would you tell them? What would you coach them? What would you want them to know?
I would especially say take logic or critical. I didn't take logic and theology in graduate school, and I just don't understand why our school system doesn't make us take that starting in middle school. I teach it for a program called Apologetics. We teach homeschoolers. And so one of the courses I teach is logic. And so I would say at least take logic so you can make sure that your reasoning is sound. You can make good arguments. You can evaluate arguments to see whether they're bad or not. Even if you take a philosophy course, it might be a bad philosophy course. So philosophers don't think that every philosophy is good. So that would depend. But I think we can agree that logic in itself is a good thing to study. And I would say that the traditional Aristotelian logic, the symbolic stuff is good, but being able to evaluate arguments the way that they're normally used in the literature would be very, very valuable.
Yeah, we're talking about like informal fallacies.
Informal fallacies for sure. How to make categorical syllogism like all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore is mortal. If it's rain, the driveway is wet. It is rain, therefore the driveway is wet. Those kind of arguments.
You want them to be equipped, obviously, what you said in critical thinking, and maybe be exposed. You said sometimes people be exposed to bad philosophy. I think it was
Right.
C.S. Lewis said we need good philosophy, at least at minimum, to combat bad
That's
philosophy.
right, right.
But we want good critical thinking to combat bad
Right.
critical thinking.
Exactly.
So that's great. Well, thank you so much for talking about that. Not everyone wants to get into abstract ideas, but we do it every day.
That's right.
When we talk about things and that. So if you want to hear more from Dr. Brian Huffling, go to reasons.org and search Brian Huffling, and you can explore his resources there with us.